Our story opens with a young lady named Chasey, known as the clingy queen for her excessive obsession with the crown prince. To stay close to the man she loved, she did not hesitate to join his army just to keep watch over him every day. Chasey's obsession spiraled out of control when she dared to sneak into the crown prince's bedroom late one night. This act, going far beyond any limit, got her caught red-handed on the spot. The tragic ending finally arrived when the crown prince, unable to bear her frenzied harassment any longer, killed her with his own hands in a fit of rage. The scene shifts to the modern world, where a young woman busy baking something in the oven suddenly hears alarming warning sounds. As the kitchen begins filling with smoke, the girl remains absorbed in reading a story on her phone, calmly remarking that Chasey's death in the novel was inevitable and well-deserved. Without warning, a terrifying explosion erupts from the oven, and fierce flames burst out, engulfing the entire space. The girl barely manages to let out a startled cry before being completely swallowed by the raging fire. When she wakes up, she sees a woman in a maid's outfit crying and desperately begging her not to close her eyes. The girl is utterly bewildered by the strange clothing of the person in front of her. Pain racks her whole body, making her groan, while the maid, unable to hide her panic, keeps asking about the young lady's condition after the accident. The maid mentions that the oven exploded, which strikes the girl as completely absurd, leaving her confused and wondering just where on earth she is. A shocking truth emerges. She has traveled through time and possessed the body of the villainess Chasey Zeviana, straight out of the novel she had just been reading. Sitting in the bath while the maids attend to her, she feels her future has become hopeless, as if her life is already over. The more she thinks about it, the more discouraged she feels, realizing she has become Chasey, a character whose fate was already sealed to die young and tragically. The maids begin to panic, realizing there is not a single decent dress left in the closet for their young lady to wear. The reason is that Chasey used to be so obsessed with chasing after the crown prince that she completely neglected her wardrobe, leaving her old dresses ruined or worn out. An eager maid brings out several carefully selected new dresses, but this new version of Chasey feels something is off and asks them to wait a moment. The maid excitedly shows off provocative outfits, which used to be the young lady's favorite style. The maid keeps urging her to pick whichever dress she likes best to wear. Standing before the grandeur of the mansion, Chasey still hesitates, wondering whether her decision to change herself is truly the right one. The maid is utterly astonished, since the young lady once swore she would never wear anything different, yet Chasey now bluntly declares that the old dresses are simply too dreadful for her to wear anymore. She decides to completely change her style and firmly orders the maid to throw away all of her old, gaudy, revealing outfits. This leaves the maid frozen in shock, unable to believe that her mistress, once so stubborn about her fashion taste, has done a complete 180. The maid quietly watches her mistress's retreating figure, her mind full of unanswered questions. Yet moments later, she feels a wave of relief, believing that her young lady has finally come to her senses and returned to normal. Chasey suddenly turns back to give one more important instruction, something she wants the maid to prepare for her right away. Meanwhile, word of Chasey blowing up the oven and ruining all the food spreads quickly among the soldiers. The soldiers gossip noisily, torn between worry over an empty stomach and dread over what troublesome scheme their young lady might pull next. A soldier suddenly freezes when he notices a figure approaching from a distance. It is none other than Chasey, but she appears with an entirely different air of confidence, dressed in a crisp military uniform, her poised stride drawing every eye toward her. Her stunning transformation in both looks and demeanor leaves onlookers utterly stunned, unable to believe their eyes. She stops in front of the Crown Prince's office and takes a moment to admire the grandeur of the place. Based on the original novel, she knows this is exactly where the prince works, and also the very place where he will kill her at the age of 18 for her obsessive stalking. Chasey turns to ask Emily her actual age at this moment, which sends the maid into a panic, fearing her mistress has lost her memory from hitting her head too hard. Emily, close to tears, reminds her that the young lady just celebrated her 15th birthday not long ago amid much joy. Hearing this, she breathes a sigh of relief, realizing she still has 3 years left to change her fate and avoid that deadly ending. Inside the office, Crown Prince Raven is reviewing a report about the oven explosion and Lady Chasey fainting while cooking. Raven coldly asks whether anyone else was hurt besides her, and is told that no one else was affected. Upon hearing the answer, he casually mutters, "Good," making it clear he has no concern whatsoever for whether she lives or dies. His subordinate looks somewhat startled and flustered by the prince's overly heartless reaction. The prince's gaze remains cold and full of disdain every time the name Chasey comes up. He reminds his deputy commander that he had better get used to the environment of the distant army soon enough. Raven also asks whether the deputy commander has ever had the chance to meet Lady Chasey. He gives a sincere piece of advice. It is best to avoid her as much as possible to steer clear of needless trouble. The deputy commander takes the warning seriously, understanding that this is someone he must be especially cautious of. Raven describes her as someone who can be recognized from a distance by the strange, ominous aura surrounding her entire body. He recalls a horrifying memory of when she once offered him waffles that, despite their name, contained not a trace of actual waffle flavor. The Crown Prince flatly states that every time he sees that woman's face, he feels nauseated and exhausted. Once again, he stresses that the deputy commander must avoid her at all costs. The moment he finishes speaking, Chasey's voice rings out asking permission to enter, leaving the deputy commander silently marveling at the prince's rotten luck for having her show up right after being mentioned. Raven coldly grants permission, and the office door slowly opens. The deputy commander steels himself, trying to maintain a dignified posture to face the monster the prince just warned him about. Crown Prince Raven flashes a meaningful smile, saying he will personally introduce this person to his subordinate. In the deputy commander's mind at this moment, Chasey looms as the most terrifying monster in existence. Yet what appears before them is a strikingly beautiful, graceful young lady in a military uniform who gently greets the Crown Prince. This drastic change leaves Crown Prince Raven wide-eyed, completely speechless. The deputy commander also falls into an awkward daze, his face blank since the person before him is nothing like what he had imagined. Chasey smiles radiantly and politely announces that she has come to escort the two of them to dinner. Both the prince and the deputy commander are utterly stunned, only able to gasp in astonishment at this unexpected invitation. She maintains her gracious manner, reminding them that dinner is already prepared and waiting for them. In truth, the distant army faces a serious problem. They have no professional cook whatsoever. Every soldier in this army has only been trained intensively in combat, making cooking an absolute nightmare for them. Their cooking scenes look no different from a battlefield, with someone once chopping clean through a cutting board while trying to cut with a knife. They are so clumsy that instead of cracking an egg into a bowl, they end up cracking it on a comrade's head, leading to scenes both hilarious and disastrous. They have even managed to turn an ordinary gas stove into what looks like a flamethrower, scorching everything within sight. The result of all their cooking efforts is always the same: plates of charred, rock-hard food that is utterly inedible. The maid is completely astonished to witness Lady Chasey demonstrate flawless knife skills and cooking technique. Chasey calculates quietly that since this bunch is quite picky about food, blowing up the stove again and running away would only put her in greater danger. She carefully tastes a spoonful of the soup she made herself, her expression full of nervous anticipation. In the end, she smiles happily because the dish tastes wonderful, realizing that cooking is both her favorite hobby and her greatest talent for surviving in this world. Chasey pours her heart into cooking, hoping to turn around everyone's poor impression of her, while also hoping the Crown Prince might come to see her a little more favorably. Yet Crown Prince Raven receives her good intentions with shocking hostility, slicing the plate of food to pieces with a knife right in front of her. He callously knocks everything to the floor and sneers that she is pulling the same petty tricks as before, with no sign of improvement whatsoever. Consumed by fury, Raven scolds her for still being as foolish as ever, daring to bring him such cheap food again. Chasey is utterly bewildered, unable to understand why she is being treated so harshly, and finds his accusation deeply confusing. The prince, still seething, coldly demands to know what scheme she is plotting behind his back this time. The dining room grows unbearably tense as the prince glares at the overturned plate of food with deep suspicion. Chasey lowers her head, her legs trembling, but she forces herself to stay calm under the prince's overwhelming pressure. To prove the food is not poisoned, she abruptly picks up a piece and eats it, leaving the prince utterly stunned. Her calm act of eating leaves both the prince and the deputy commander beside him completely frozen in shock. She straightens her clothes neatly, preparing to give a clear explanation for her actions. Chasey insists she has no idea what misunderstanding has occurred, but assures him this is an entirely ordinary dish made from the freshest ingredients. She states plainly that if the prince has firmly decided not to eat, she will not force him, but asks that he not discard someone else's hard work so carelessly. The prince abruptly springs to his feet, raising his voice to insist she must be plotting some new scheme yet again. He coldly declares that she can do whatever she pleases, but she will never be able to fool him again, then turns and storms off. The door slams shut with cruel finality, leaving Chasey standing alone, her face clearly showing sorrow and disappointment. The deputy commander lingers, watching her retreating figure as a heavy, unsettling silence fills the room. Chasey lowers her head, her mind tangled with thoughts about why everything has turned out so badly. But she is somewhat surprised to see the deputy commander beside her happily eating away. On the ride home, Chasey sits quietly by the window, gazing into the distance, weighed down by heavy thoughts. Emily gently speaks up to announce they have arrived back at the mansion, pulling her out of her drifting thoughts. The moment she steps into the room, she suddenly freezes, sensing something is not quite right. She cannot help but gasp at the sheer magnificence and extravagance of the room that will be hers. She silently marvels that this mansion truly lives up to its splendor, worthy of being the residence of the most powerful family in the empire. Overwhelmed by such opulence, she feels a bit dazed, while Emily cheerfully announces she is off to prepare a bath for her. Sitting down heavily on the bed, Chasey feels completely overwhelmed by everything around her and struggles to adjust right away. Suddenly, she notices something unusual and grows curious about what it might be. She bends down to look under the bed to examine the strange object that has caught her eye. Spotting a small box, she wonders whether it might be a secret jewelry box of some kind. Chasey carefully reaches out to open the lid of the old wooden box to discover what lies inside. The moment she sees what is inside the box, her eyes go wide with utter shock. Right at that moment, Emily returns to announce the bath is ready and finds her mistress holding the box in her hands. The maid lets out a surprised gasp upon seeing that her mistress has found the secret item. Noticing her mistress's strange expression, Emily worriedly asks if something is wrong. Chasey picks up the strand of pink hair inside the box and asks Emily if she knows what it is, since her own memory is still quite hazy. Emily hesitantly explains it belonged to a young lady whom Chasey used to despise intensely. She finds this very strange, since this detail was never mentioned in the novel she had read, and wonders why she would have hated that person in the first place. It turns out the reason was that the woman had once tried to seduce the crown prince, which Chasey finds entirely fitting, given what she now knows of the original character's personality. She suddenly understands why Raven had been so shocked to see her behaving so differently all of a sudden. Chasey mutters that she should find a chance to apologize to that woman, leaving Emily so stunned she can hardly believe her own ears. Emily reveals the shocking truth that the woman passed away long ago, leaving Chasey frozen in disbelief. She begins to spiral into confusion, wondering just who she really was in her past life. Emily explains that this was no ordinary incident, since the entire kingdom knew that woman to be an extraordinarily disturbed person. According to the story, that woman had secretly slipped an aphrodisiac into the crown prince's food and was caught red-handed sneaking into his bedroom. Chasey recalls that in the original novel, she herself was supposed to be the one who did that. But Emily says that back then she had been furious and even demanded to kill the woman with her own hands, calling it an unforgivable crime. In the end, that woman, rejected and humiliated, drank poison and took her own life right in front of the prince, an act Chasey has to admit was madness on an entirely different level. She realizes that although the original character had a reputation for obsessive stalking, she never went to such an extreme. And more importantly, the story's plot has now completely changed. The story moves into a new chapter as everyone begins to notice that the meals Chasey prepares perfectly suit the soldiers' taste. The deputy commander reports to the prince that, from now on, the young lady will continue overseeing meal preparation for the army. Raven coldly tells his subordinate to relay that she can do whatever she wants. He no longer cares. Still, the deputy commander feels there is something else weighing on his mind that he needs to bring up with the prince. In the kitchen, Chasey continues cooking diligently, quietly thinking that the direction of the novel truly seems to be shifting. She tells herself that if she wants to change the tragic ending awaiting her, she must pour everything she has into what she is doing now. Emily walks into the kitchen with a bright smile, ready to lend a hand. Chasey happily invites the maid to try a bite of the dish she just finished making. Emily praises it enthusiastically, insisting everyone will love it, which gives Chasey hope that the prince might feel the same way. She resolves that no matter what, she will get the prince to try her cooking today. The deputy commander delivers a message from the prince, saying he has officially permitted her to manage the army's meals. Just as Chasey feels a surge of hope, the deputy commander hesitates and adds the word, however. The harsh truth is that the prince has declared he will not touch a single bite of food as long as she remains in the kitchen. Hearing this, she feels utterly discouraged and wonders if he is planning some kind of hunger strike just to spite her. She realizes that their relationship has already become such a disaster from her past stalking behavior that a simple apology will not be enough. To prove her sincerity and seriousness, she decides she must do something truly different and decisive. The deputy commander is astonished to see the young lady's attitude shift so suddenly, turning unusually resolute. Chasey clearly declares that from this moment on, she too will refuse to eat anything at all. This declaration leaves the deputy commander stunned, unable to understand why she would make such a reckless decision. With fierce determination burning in her eyes, she insists she cannot stand by and watch the prince suffer from starvation. Yet in truth, her hands are trembling, and she secretly fears she will starve before the prince ever agrees to eat a single bite. Watching the prince still training vigorously in the yard, she cannot help but wonder how he manages to maintain such abundant energy on an empty stomach. The silver-haired girl feels her head spinning and tells herself she needs to find somewhere quiet to rest. A wave of dizziness blurs her vision, her violet eyes showing clear signs of exhaustion. Unable to keep her balance any longer, she staggers, nearly collapsing to the floor. At that very moment, a firm hand suddenly reaches out and grips her shoulder tightly. The one holding her up is none other than the prince, his sharp gaze fixed on her. She starts to thank him but freezes in shock upon recognizing who he is. She is utterly baffled, wondering how he could have been standing so far away just moments ago, yet appeared right beside her in the blink of an eye. The young man coldly asks what she wants and reminds her that this area is strictly off-limits. Faced with his sharp tone, she can only freeze, caught completely off guard. She hastily explains and apologizes, saying she simply lost her balance from a sudden dizzy spell. He looks at her with obvious disdain and remarks that she truly is nothing but trouble. The young man warns her not to misunderstand his act of helping her just now. He states firmly that no matter what trick she might be playing, he will never open his heart to someone like her. Not stopping there, he cruelly goes so far as to call her a murderer. The accusation leaves her stunned, and she begins to sense that there is some terrible secret about her past that she knows nothing about. She wonders what that title could possibly mean, while also puzzling over the young man's strange attire and hostile attitude toward her. He tells her to drop this act of feigned calm at once, since it is far too obvious to be convincing. He snaps at her to just behave the way she truly does, day in and day out. She lowers her head slightly and sincerely apologizes for all her past misdeeds. The young man is left dumbfounded, unable to believe his own ears upon hearing that apology. She firmly promises that from now on, she will never stalk or bother him again. The young man laughs scornfully, doubting how he could possibly believe such an empty promise. She gently reminds him to think back on these past few days, when she has not followed him at all, and assures him this will not change going forward. Faced with her steady resolve, he simply falls silent, watching her with a scrutinizing gaze. Changing the subject, she tries to persuade him to eat at least a little something to keep up his strength. He coldly turns away, dismissing all her efforts as pointless. She points out that a hunger strike only works if he actually values his own health. She warns him that no matter how fine he feels now, if he keeps this up, his body will eventually break down. But before she can finish her advice, she herself suddenly stumbles and nearly falls. The young man is startled to see her stagger and collapse into his arms. In the end, she finally succeeds in persuading the prince to sit down at the table and eat. The prince takes his first taste of the hot vegetable soup that has been prepared. He looks visibly surprised after the first bite, as the flavor turns out to be nothing like what he had imagined. She smiles and remarks that the dish is not bad at all, thanking him for finally agreeing to eat. Afterward, she sits alone, quietly enjoying a cup of tea in the peaceful atmosphere. Yet the phrase murderer continues to haunt her, leaving her mind in turmoil. She decides to ask Emily whether she had ever committed any crime in the past. She clarifies that she means something truly terrible, like killing someone. Emily bursts out laughing, insisting that her mistress could never do such a thing. Seeing that her mistress does not remember, Emily offers to recount some of her past habits to put her mind at ease. Emily recalls that Chasey used to be deeply afraid of bugs, but could never bring herself to kill them, always ordering the servants to catch and release them instead. Back then, she reasoned that killing them would be far more troublesome and unpleasant than simply letting them go. She awkwardly tells Emily that from now on she can handle the insects however she likes. Emily smiles and confidently declares that her mistress is truly a good person who would never wish harm on anyone. She feels a little more at ease and thanks Emily sincerely for the comforting words. A while later, she decides to head into town on her own to buy some cooking ingredients. To avoid drawing attention, she carefully wraps herself in a black hooded cloak. Along the way, she witnesses a nobleman bullying a small child and snatching away his stuffed toy. The man mocks the toy as worthless trash and threatens to burn it for firewood. Unable to stand by, she speaks up, demanding the nobleman stop his cruel behavior at once. She glares at him, demanding to know why he refuses to return the toy to the child. The nobleman sneers with contempt, surprised that a stranger would dare interfere in his business. He deliberately throws the stuffed toy onto the ground and taunts the child to come and pick it up himself. She strides forward calmly, and the man begins to sense that something is not right. When she pulls back her hood, the nobleman freezes at her commanding presence and stammers, asking who she is. The crowd around them begins to murmur upon recognizing her silver hair and noble violet eyes. The nobleman's face turns pale as he realizes he has just crossed someone he should never have provoked. He trembles upon learning she is a member of the prestigious Zeviana family. She demands that he apologize to the child immediately and return the stuffed toy properly. The man still tries to argue stubbornly, questioning why, as fellow nobles, she would treat him this way. She fires back, asking whether his family ever taught him that being a noble gives him the right to bully others without cause. The murmuring crowd grows louder, leaving the nobleman thoroughly humiliated. He seethes with resentment at being disgraced by a woman in the middle of the street. Yet before her authority, he has no choice but to bend down and pick up the stuffed toy. He tosses the toy back and grumbles a threat at the child to watch himself from now on. She coldly declares that if he has any objections, he is welcome to bring them directly to the Zeviana estate. The nobleman and his followers flee in terror, scrambling to get away as fast as possible. She gently kneels down to look at the child, who gazes back at her with sparkling admiration. She kindly tells the little one that if he is ever bullied again, he should come find her for help. From a distance, someone has silently witnessed her entire noble and dignified act. A mysterious figure clad in full steel armor quietly observes everything with a sharp, watchful gaze. Chasey watches the soldiers pass by, wondering whether their lunch had tasted good, though everyone seems far too busy for her to ask. She walks over to Damien on her own initiative to find out if anything serious is going on with the troops. Damien explains that other tribes to the north are stirring up trouble, so the army will need to set out within a few days to carry out a pacification mission. Hearing that the army is about to depart, Chasey grows anxious over how little time they have to prepare for such a demanding journey. Damien reassures her that this is routine and they will handle everything smoothly, as always. She begins worrying ahead of time about their food supply, wondering whether she should prepare plenty of dried meat to prevent the food from spoiling along the way. Sir Bass suddenly appears, looking excited, and asks whether Chasey plans to join the expedition along with the rest of the group. Upon hearing warnings about the harshness of the ancient forest, she insists she must go, worried that no one else would take proper care of everyone's meals. Sir Bass laughs heartily and pats her head, remarking that having her along will surely be an enormous help. Chasey asks about the expected duration of the expedition so she can prepare the ingredients in time. Sir Bass guesses that with the prince joining them, the trip probably will not last too long. Just then, the soldier wearing the mysterious steel helmet approaches, startling her, while Sir Bass directly asks him for the exact length of the journey. The soldier begins raising a hand to remove the heavy steel helmet from his head, drawing curious glances from those nearby. The prince reveals himself with golden hair and piercingly sharp eyes, announcing that the journey will take no more than a week, leaving Chasey frozen in shock. Sir Bass sighs with relief at the short time frame, while she is still reeling, unable to figure out how long he had been standing there unnoticed. Seeing her still dazed, Sir Bass repeats the 1-week time frame, and she can only nod along awkwardly under the prince's watchful presence. When asked about food preparation, Chasey reveals her plan to learn preservation magic to keep the food fresh, instead of relying solely on plain dried meat. The two of them discuss how ingredients pre-enchanted with preservation magic tend to be quite expensive, something she had never paid attention to before. The expedition truly begins, and Chasey stands deep in the forest, her face pale, struggling to believe just how much harsher and more grueling reality is compared to what she had imagined. She looks around the gloomy forest, overwhelmed with anxiety, wondering how she will ever manage to get through such a daunting challenge. Exhausted and out of breath, she cannot help but wonder why all the soldiers around her still appear perfectly fine, as if simply out for a stroll. Watching the men march briskly ahead of her, she begins to doubt whether they are truly flesh-and-blood humans at all. Worn out, she asks Damien whether he could use teleportation magic to send the whole group straight to their destination, just like at the edge of the forest, to spare them from walking further. Damien offers to have someone escort her out of the forest if it becomes too much for her, but she firmly refuses, unwilling to become a burden to everyone else. She tries to carve a path through the tangled vines with a small knife, all under Damien's silent, watchful gaze. Damien worriedly reports to the prince that Chasey is pushing herself too hard and appears to be growing more exhausted with every step of the journey. He hesitantly asks the prince whether they should simply let her struggle on her own in such an exhausted state. Instead of answering directly, the prince gives Damien a meaningful look and asks since when he started caring so much about someone else. Realizing he has overstepped, Damien quickly bows his head and apologizes for showing excessive concern for the young lady. The prince coldly tells him to stop worrying about her and focus entirely on commanding the march instead. The leader of the army strides forward decisively, leaving Chasey behind, exhausted and forced to sit down on the ground to rest. Despite his indifferent, cold demeanor, he cannot help but glance back at her small figure gradually falling behind in the distance. Chasey tells herself she must not act proud or demand special treatment as she used to, if she truly wants to change how everyone sees her. She encourages herself, insisting that she is now a mature, sensible adult who will surely have the strength to overcome any hardship. But harsh reality strikes when her leg is suddenly caught in the grip of a vicious tangle of vines, leaving her unable to break free. Her eyes fill with panic and fear as she realizes she has landed herself in serious trouble deep within the forest. She struggles hopelessly to free her leg, while the group ahead has already vanished completely from sight. A sharp pain shoots through her shoulder, making her wince, sweat pouring down her face from both the pain and the fear of being left behind alone. Every desperate attempt to break free from the natural trap only leaves her more drained and utterly out of strength. Falling leaves drift around her as if mocking her, as the army's shadow disappears entirely, leaving not a single soul by her side. Her terrified scream echoes through the dark, ancient forest as she falls, racked with pain and utterly alone. In the depths of despair, all she can do is weakly cry for help, clinging to the faint hope that someone might hear her voice. A strange light suddenly appears amid the lush green foliage, signaling a fateful encounter she has no way of foreseeing. Chasey lies collapsed on the grass, gasping for breath, overwhelmed with panic at realizing she has completely lost the army and has no idea where she is. From within a nearby bush, a pair of deep blue eyes quietly watches the strange girl with a mix of curiosity and caution. A young elf boy with pure white hair and pointed ears appears, looking at her with innocent eyes that nonetheless carry a sharp, scrutinizing edge. The boy asks for the identity of the girl lying pitifully on territory that does not belong to humans. He remarks that there is something truly special about Chasey, as if she is different from the greedy humans he has encountered before. She can only stare blankly at the beautiful boy before her, her mind still too clouded to respond properly. The elf boy finds it strange, since he can usually hear the inner voices of humans, yet with her he hears absolutely nothing at all. When Chasey asks whether he has the ability to read minds, the boy calmly confirms it as an innate ability of his kind. Back at camp, the atmosphere grows unbearably tense and grim as the scouting party has still not returned to report. Damien sits deep in thought beside the campfire, his eyes fixed on the map while his mind is consumed with worry over the young lady's whereabouts. The prince suddenly stands up, visibly impatient, and begins pacing around the campsite to check on everything. He presses his subordinates about Chasey's whereabouts upon realizing she has been missing from sight for quite some time. Despite objections concerning his own safety, the prince decides to personally venture deep into the forest to search for her. He orders Damien and the others not to reveal to anyone in the army that he has gone looking for Chasey. Back with Chasey, terrified, she asks the elf boy where they are and why he brought her to such an unfamiliar place. The boy looks straight into her eyes and declares that the goal of humans like her, coming here, is to slaughter his people. Chasey is stunned and shaken by such a serious accusation coming from an unfamiliar elf child. She tries to stay calm and asks whether he belongs to some other race carrying out the recent kidnappings of local villagers. The elf boy reacts fiercely, insisting his people have always lived peacefully and would never commit such cruel acts against humans. Realizing there has been a huge misunderstanding between the two sides, Chasey firmly assures him that the prince would never harm innocent people. The boy remains doubtful, saying he can sense killing intent radiating from the many weapons the human army carries so close to his territory. She calmly explains that the army came here only because they heard another tribe was harming the local people, and they wished to put a stop to it. She gently reassures the boy that if the elves truly are not attacking anyone, the prince will certainly never lay a hand on them. The boy looks deeply into her eyes and realizes she is an incredibly honest person, someone who seems utterly incapable of lying. He reveals that he believes her not only because of his mind-reading ability, but also because he can sense genuine sincerity through her emotions and her distinct scent. Chasey blinks in astonishment. She has no idea what he means by the word scent. The elf boy explains that humans who lie often give off a very distinctive smell, leaving Chasey curious whether this is some kind of animal instinct. The atmosphere in the forest begins to shift, signaling that trouble is about to strike. The elf boy suddenly grows alarmed, urging Chasey to find a hiding place immediately, as the situation is turning extremely dangerous. A group of fierce-looking half-beasts appears, declaring that they have caught the scent of humans in the area. Despite his small size, the elf boy bravely stands his ground, declaring that this territory is not theirs to trespass on so freely. The half-beasts mock him with contempt, calling him nothing but a weak half-breed with no authority to give them orders. Their eyes quickly lock onto Chasey, and they let out a triumphant roar upon spotting their human target. Chasey is stunned to come face-to-face with non-human races for the very first time in real life. In the midst of the crisis, she urgently pulls the boy along and tells him they must flee together as fast as possible. The half-beasts launch their attack, plunging the scene into complete chaos and tension. At that exact moment, a sword suddenly comes flying, cutting through the ferocity of the half-beasts. The prince suddenly appears and scolds Chasey for once again causing such a massive mess, leaving her frozen in shock at his sudden arrival. The prince strides coldly toward the half-beasts, radiating an overwhelming killing intent. A sharp glint flashes in his eyes, ready to punish anyone who dares threaten what belongs to him. With nothing but a few decisive strikes of his sword, the prince ruthlessly cuts down the entire group of ferocious half-beasts. Chasey weakly calls out the prince's name, awestruck by his overwhelming display of power. He coldly demands to know why she is here and questions the identity of the strange creature accompanying her. The prince suspects that this elf boy might be the one who lured or led Chasey into such a dangerous place. Chasey hurriedly defends the boy, explaining that she had actually gotten caught in a tangle of vines, and it was he who saved her life. The elf boy whispers that he strongly dislikes this man, since his heart is far too loud and turbulent, while Chasey can only laugh awkwardly and insist that he is a good person. Their friendly exchange makes the atmosphere among the three of them turn rather awkward. The prince watches the scene with visible displeasure, bluntly declaring that he does not like this one bit. Finally, the prince orders everyone to return immediately and regroup with the rest of the soldiers. Chasey suddenly cries out in pain, startling both of the others. The prince quickly notices she is in pain and presses her to explain exactly where she was hurt. He discovers that Chasey's shoulder has swollen up and demands she explain clearly what happened. Chasey tries to hide it, but the prince realizes the injury was actually caused by himself, from when he had shoved her against the wall earlier. The prince is about to unleash his fury on the fallen half-beasts, but Chasey quickly stops him, insisting he had saved her before they could even attack. He glares intently at the elf boy with suspicion and scrutiny. Chasey asks the prince to put the boy down, and only then does the boy, still fuming, introduce himself as Zephy. The prince still refuses to let it go, continuing to press her to confess the truth about who hurt her shoulder. When Chasey lies that she was simply injured while exercising, the prince immediately exposes her clumsy attempt at deception. He mocks her for once, lecturing others about health while constantly oversleeping herself, leaving her thoroughly embarrassed at being called out. Chasey feels flustered, not knowing what to do, unwilling to let the atmosphere between them grow any more awkward. The prince declares that he is not someone with the patience to wait around. He begins using his authority to force Chasey to confess the truth immediately. The pressure from the prince fills Chasey with a strange, overwhelming wave of fear. Flustered, she finally admits that it was because he had gripped her shoulder tightly and shoved her against the wall that she got hurt in the first place. The revealed truth leaves the prince frozen, overwhelmed with guilt. Chasey realizes he had just used a spell of compelling truth to force her confession and silently blames him for playing dirty. It comes as a genuine surprise when someone as proud as the prince sincerely apologizes, leaving Chasey stunned. She freezes for a moment, unable to believe her own ears upon hearing him apologize. The prince insists this injury cannot be taken lightly and promises to arrange proper treatment for her the moment they return to the palace. Chasey gently declines, saying that simply seeing a doctor or a priest should be enough for her to recover soon. Still uneasy, the prince tells her that if the pain worsens, she must let him know right away. She bows her head slightly, thanking him for his unexpected and heartfelt concern. Zeffy clears his throat to draw the attention of the two of them. The elf boy irritably demands that the prince put him down on the ground immediately. The prince gives the boy a sharp warning glare before finally letting go. Zeffy lands safely on the ground but still shoots an annoyed glance at the prince. The moment he is free, the boy immediately runs to Chasey, seeking her protection and comfort. Zeffy's excessive affection toward Chasey leaves the prince thoroughly irritated. Chasey wonders about the healing abilities of the elf race that she once read about in books. Zeffy notices how much her shoulder hurts and offers to use magic to heal her right there on the spot. The prince immediately snaps at him to stop, ordering the boy not to touch her. Zeffy fires back, saying he is only trying to heal the wound that the prince himself caused Chasey. The elf boy warns her she might feel a slight tingling sensation before he begins focusing to cast the spell. A stream of magical light envelops Chasey's shoulder under everyone's watchful eyes. The healing process unfolds in a silence full of anticipation from all three of them. The light gradually fades away from Chasey's shoulder. Zeffy suddenly looks puzzled, realizing that even though the magic reached its target, the wound shows no sign of improvement at all. Chasey smiles reassuringly, suggesting that perhaps her body is simply resistant to magic, all while privately wondering why this development differs so much from the original novel. The prince tells Chasey to just leave the boy behind so the two of them can head back to the army. Zeffy panics and clings to them, pleading desperately not to be left alone in this forest. The boy insists he has an extremely important secret that both of them absolutely need to know. Zeffy officially reveals that his true identity is the supreme leader uniting all the half-beast tribes in this forest. Both Chasey and the prince are utterly stunned by this shocking revelation about the child's true identity. Zeffy sadly admits that since he has not yet completed his coming-of-age ceremony, no one in his tribe is currently willing to listen to him. He begins to reveal the real reason behind the half-beast tribe's uprising and the deeper cause that has drawn the prince to this forest. Zeffy bows his head, admitting that he himself is the true source of all the trouble unfolding here. The boy earnestly asks to borrow Chasey's strength to carry out a ritual, hoping it will help protect both the forest and its people from further harm. Raven stands beside them, watching Zeffy with a suspicious, unfavorable expression. The prince immediately refuses without a moment's hesitation. Raven explains that it is their absolute, unbreakable rule not to interfere in internal affairs or trespass on the territory of other races. Still, Raven turns to ask Chasey about the necessary conditions for carrying out the ritual Zeffy just mentioned. Zeffy hesitantly reveals that to come of age, he needs to be recognized by the elf god, but that very god has been refusing to grant him recognition. Chasey, surprised, asks why a child like him would be denied acceptance by the god of his own tribe. The elf boy says sadly that the reason lies in the fact that he is only a half-elf. Zeffy confesses that he is of mixed blood, carrying the lineage of both elves and another race, which is why he is often called a half-breed. But then the boy suddenly brightens, insisting there is still one way left to resolve this predicament. He believes that if he gets married, the god might change his mind and finally recognize him as truly grown. Both Chasey and Raven freeze, speechless at the boy's audacious idea. Zeffy suddenly drops to his knees, takes Chasey's hand, and clearly proposes marriage to her right there on the spot. A dead silence falls over the awkward scene as Raven and Chasey can only stare at each other, dumbfounded. Zeffy stresses that if he cannot come of age, this forest will remain trapped in danger forever, and everyone will suffer because of him. Raven flatly speaks up in protest, declaring he will never approve of such an absurd marriage. Chasey, on the other hand, feels her heart soften at the boy's pitiful, pure, and endearing appearance. Raven starts to lose his temper, asking whether she truly intends to marry someone purely out of a fleeting emotional impulse. He reminds her that the other party is just a child she met only a few hours ago. The prince looks at her with a sharp gaze, clearly showing his extreme displeasure. Chasey gently pulls Zeffy into a comforting embrace, despite the fierce objection from the person beside her. Raven warns her that trusting a complete stranger simply out of compassion is far from a wise decision. He steps closer and presses Zeffy about his actual age. Faced with the boy's silence, Raven threatens to use force to make him confess the truth. Zeffy trembles and finally admits that he has actually lived for 227 years. He quickly explains that elves can live for thousands of years, so at that age he is still considered a mere child and hopes they will not misunderstand. The unlucky elf boy begs Chasey not to hate him, insisting he never had any intention of deceiving her. With that, Zeffy pretends to collapse from exhaustion, falling to the ground to gain sympathy. Raven laughs mockingly, asking Chasey whether she still wants to marry a 200-year-old geezer. Zeffy jolts up and shouts, demanding that Raven stop calling him an old man. Chasey quickly steps in to calm them both down, urging them to discuss a solution together. She explains to Zeffy that the army's real goal here is to suppress the aggressive half-beasts. Raven begins considering a peaceful solution to resolve the conflict instead of resorting to swords. He declares that if there is a way to avoid bloodshed, he is willing to cooperate and will not turn a blind eye to the situation. Chasey suggests the idea of going to meet the elf god to try to persuade him to recognize Zeffy. Raven sighs and agrees to go meet the elf tribe's god at her request. Still, he does not forget to warn Zeffy that if the boy ever brings up the word marriage again, the consequences will be severe. The prince radiates a terrifying killing intent, threatening to raze the entire forest if the boy ever harbors dark intentions toward Chasey. Zeffy privately thinks Raven is quite the difficult character, and is certain the man harbors special feelings for Chasey. Raven turns away and quietly tells himself that perhaps he should try being a little more honest with his own emotions. Zeffy begins leading the two of them deeper into his tribe's settlement. Upon arrival, Chasey cannot help but marvel at the breathtaking, almost magical beauty of the elf village. However, she soon senses something odd, noticing that the villagers here all seem to be hiding stealthily. The three of them cross a long suspension bridge leading into the heart of the village. Raven explains to Chasey that these elves are genuinely terrified of humans. She wonders why they harbor such deep fear that they feel the need to hide like this. Raven speaks gravely, recounting how long ago, humans once committed brutal massacres against the half-beast tribes. The conflict originally began as a response to aggression from the half-beasts, but things gradually spiraled far out of control. The war lost its original just cause and devolved into brutal, indiscriminate attacks. Before anyone realized it, hunting half-beasts had turned into a twisted form of human entertainment. They captured those who looked different, exploited their labor to the point of exhaustion, and paraded them like trophies to boast about. Chasey falls silent, deeply troubled upon hearing about this dark, hidden chapter in the history between the two races. Raven notes that this belongs to the distant past, and such practices are now strictly forbidden by law. Still, he also reveals that wealthy nobles continue to secretly trade half-beasts behind closed doors. Chasey suddenly realizes this is exactly why the character Raven in the novel harbors such deep hatred for the nobility. Raven glances at Chasey as if trying to gauge her reaction to these harsh truths. Zeffy stands silently, watching the two of them, seemingly carrying his own private thoughts as well. Chasey approaches an elf hiding behind a tree and gently greets them. A small, timid elf girl peeks out shyly to look at the strange human girl. Zeffy quickly speaks up to reassure his people that Chasey is an incredibly kind and gentle person. Chasey feels a little embarrassed, not wanting to become the center of so much attention. Her actions begin to break down the wall of fear among the villagers. Seeing this, other elves gradually begin to emerge from their hiding spots as well. A curious elf child approaches and asks if she is truly a human. Chasey smiles and confirms it, assuring the child that she is not as frightening as they think. The child, gazing at her with admiration, feels that this girl radiates a strange sense of warmth. The children crowd around Chasey, praising her sweet scent and beautiful hair, and even ask to braid it for her. Chasey eagerly pulls out some cookies to share, and the elf children are absolutely delighted with this unfamiliar treat. Chasey offers the elf children a taste of the sweet, fragrant cookies she brought along. The children eat happily, repeatedly praising how sweet and delicious the cookies are, filling the atmosphere with joy. Raven and Chasey watch the children from a distance, Raven's gaze thoughtful as he looks at the girl beside him. The elderly elves nearby begin to talk among themselves, remarking that Chasey radiates a pure energy and treats the children with remarkable gentleness. Chasey sits down to play with the children while someone else approaches from nearby. The children gather around her, cheering excitedly as they watch Chasey's hair shimmer as if touched by magic. She smiles brightly as the children praise her hair for being beautiful, soft, and wonderfully fluffy. An elderly elf with a long beard steps forward, introducing himself as the village elder, and politely asks for the human girl's identity. Chasey quickly bows respectfully and introduces herself as Chasey Zeviana. The village elder studies her closely, then praises the peaceful, pure energy radiating from her, a rare quality among humans. Touched by his sincere praise, she can only scratch her head bashfully and thank the elder. The village elder clears his throat and asks again to confirm whether she truly wishes to meet the elf god. Chasey clearly affirms that she genuinely wants to help the tribe, which is why she hopes to meet that god. The elder explains that the elf god resides at the very heart of the forest, a place where different worlds intersect and where the purest energies converge. He adds that unless one belongs to the elf race, only those who possess the primal beauty can open the gate leading to the god's realm. Raven listens intently to the explanation, murmuring the phrase primal beauty to himself with a deeply thoughtful expression. Zephy encourages Raven, assuring him that Chasey will surely be fine since she is remarkably pure, quite unlike someone else he could name. Raven and Zephy resume their intense staring contest, clearly still unable to get along with each other. The village elder appears alongside a priestess. They request that a purification ritual be performed to open the elf gate and ask if she is mentally prepared. Chasey nods with determination, ready to comply with whatever is required to begin the ritual. The village elder turns to ask Raven whether he intends to participate as well. Raven flatly declines, saying he sees no need for the ritual and insists they proceed with Chasey alone. He steps aside, keeping a cold expression despite the elder's slightly surprised gaze. After a brief silence, the elder lets out a soft sigh, seeming to understand his reasoning. He then signals for everyone to move toward the altar to begin the main ceremony. The group begins walking through the tranquil space, Chasey following the village elder with a heart full of anticipation. Raven and Zephy walk side by side, both wearing serious expressions as they approach the site of the ritual. Chasey swallows nervously, trying to steady herself before the important trial ahead. Chasey and the village elder move together toward the tribe's sacred altar to perform a ritual of great consequence. The elderly elf carefully places a brilliant purple magic stone onto the ancient stone platform to begin awakening its hidden power. Everyone present, from the dignified Prince Raven to the members of the elf tribe, watches with intense focus as the ritual unfolds. Guided by the elder, Chasey kneels reverently before the altar, steadying her mind for the spiritual trial ahead. The elder instructs her to close her eyes and bravely confront the hidden shadows lurking deep within her soul. Instantly, the magic stone bursts into a blinding light, engulfing the entire space and leaving everyone in awe. In her subconscious, Chasey is confronted by harsh criticisms from the past, describing a girl who was always fake, indifferent, and utterly incapable of genuine feeling toward anyone. Overwhelmed by pain and torment, she cannot hold back her tears, her knees buckling under the weight of these horrifying memories flooding back. She realizes with dismay that despite her efforts to start a new life, the dark memories of the original character have not faded as much as she had hoped. Chasey wonders why she must endure this when she never wished to harm anyone, yet the reality remains that people have still been hurt because of her. She begins to reflect deeply on the differences between people and the harsh prejudices society imposes on them. With a look of firm resolve, she tells herself that no matter how different she may be, no one has the right to trample on her or hurt her ever again. In response to the strength within Chasey's soul, the radiant light from the magic stone surges once more, blazing even brighter than before. The elder cries out in joy and amazement as the gate leading to the divine realm finally opens successfully. The elf god appears from within the trunk of an ancient tree, radiating purity, though Chasey senses that this deity's energy feels far weaker than she had imagined. The boy is utterly astonished that the prince can perceive the divine presence without any ritual at all, but the prince simply replies, cryptically, that the boy would be shocked if he knew the truth about him. The elf god addresses Chasey, calling her a human who carries the primal beauty within her, a truly extraordinary existence. The god gently asks what has driven her to travel all this way just to seek him out and share her message. Chasey earnestly pleads with the god to grant Zephy recognition as leader, so the boy can fulfill his mission of protecting the tribes of the forest. However, the god refuses, coldly declaring that everything in this world has its own predetermined time, and it cannot be forced. The god insists this is a trial Zephy must overcome on his own, one that no one else has the right or the ability to complete for him. Though she understands there is some truth in the god's words, Chasey still cannot accept such rigidity, since it is causing so much needless suffering. Suddenly, Zephy grabs Chasey's hand and declares to the god that he has brought his bride, so the god is now obligated to recognize him as an adult. The boy showers her with praise, calling her the perfect wife with a warm heart, always gentle and caring toward him. Faced with Zephy's confident declarations, Chasey can only awkwardly go along with it, flustered, since deep down she only sees him as an adorable child. Zephy adds insult to injury by demanding a kiss to seal the claim, leaving the atmosphere among the three of them unbearably awkward. Witnessing this, Prince Raven radiates a suffocating dark aura, his face twisted with barely controlled rage. Without a word, he grabs the elf boy by the collar to put a stop to his overly familiar behavior with Chasey. The prince delivers one final icy warning, ordering Zephy not to move or cause any more trouble for even a moment longer. The entire space falls into a suffocating silence under the terrifying authority of the Empire's leader. Chasey suddenly breaks the silence, directly challenging the god, insisting that what he just said sounds deeply strange and unreasonable. The elf god questions what a small human like her could possibly find unsatisfactory about his judgment. She bluntly criticizes the god for acting far too selfishly and irresponsibly toward the safety of his own people in the forest. Her bold declaration leaves both the prince and the elder utterly stunned with shock. Chasey clearly points out that it is precisely the god's own contradiction, choosing Zephy as leader yet denying him the chance to come of age, that has caused all this chaos. Because Zephy cannot officially take charge, the tribes have descended into rebellion and slaughter, causing countless deaths and injuries among innocent people. Prince Raven watches Chasey's back in silence, seeming to see her in an entirely new light. She asks the god, in his role as protector of nature, whether he truly believes that turning a blind eye to such a tragedy is the right thing to do. The elf god remains unmoved, insisting that suffering is a necessary lesson for the child to broaden his perspective, and that everyone else simply has to wait. Prince Raven's fury erupts to its peak, and he grabs Zephy's collar tightly, his eyes blazing with dangerous intensity. He growls, asking whether he is expected to stand here and waste his time listening to such nonsensical, baseless preaching. Surprisingly, Zephy fully agrees with the prince, unable to accept the god's indifference toward his own protector's plight. Raven remarks sarcastically that this is the first time the two of them have ever seen eye to eye, then turns to directly challenge the god's very claim to divinity. He warns the god that if he wishes to test someone, he should do it quietly deep in the forest, instead of putting on such a display right in front of him. As the prince of the empire, Raven declares he will not tolerate anyone who behaves like an irresponsible bystander. He orders the god to recognize Zephy as leader immediately, or else witness a catastrophic outcome. The prince threatens to destroy the current god and personally establish a new one of his own making to take his place. The elf god is stunned by the sheer arrogance of a human daring to challenge the very laws of nature itself. Raven laughs coldly, sneering at the so-called power of nature that the god has always taken such pride in. He challenges the god to a contest of strength, to see who truly holds power closer to the origin of this world. A dark, menacing aura erupts violently from the prince, creating a crushing pressure that bears down on everything around them. Everyone present trembles, not even daring to breathe deeply under the terrifying energy surging through the air. A massive dark silhouette looms behind Raven, a testament to his destructive power and unrivaled status. The elf god is stunned to realize this power is so immense that not even the spirits of the earth itself could withstand it. The prince coldly tells the god he may continue his lecture, but only after kneeling down to apologize to him first. Overwhelmed by such crushing authority, the elf god cannot stand his ground and collapses to the earth in utter humiliation. In the end, the god has no choice but to concede, declaring that the coming-of-age ceremony will proceed exactly as requested. The god promises to bestow his blessing upon Zephy, filling the boy with overwhelming joy, while the elder remains too stunned to speak. With the conflict finally resolved, the elf god gradually dissolves into the air, restoring peace to the forest. However, Prince Raven begins to show signs of exhaustion, breathing heavily from having used far more power than his body could handle. Chasey rushes over anxiously to check on him, but the prince's expression at this moment looks utterly terrifying. He abruptly shoves her away and shouts at her not to take a single step closer. Raven's sudden change in attitude leaves Chasey stunned, unable to understand what she did wrong to provoke such a violent reaction. In Raven's chaotic mind, the image of the present-day Chasey suddenly blurs together with a haunting vision of a cruel woman from his past. The prince's eyes turn bloodshot with pain, as if he is fiercely battling to keep the darkness within him from consuming him entirely. He keeps muttering, begging Chasey to stay away from him before he completely loses his mind and does something terrible. In his moment of losing control, Raven unintentionally unleashes a powerful burst of energy that repels everything around him, including the very girl worried about him. The elf tribe members can only watch in horror as the terrifying disaster unfolds right before their eyes. A massive magical explosion erupts, sending up a thick cloud of dust that blinds everyone present. In the end, Chasey lies motionless on the grass after the impact, while the prince's anguished cries, calling her name, echo throughout the dark forest. Raven looks visibly panicked and shaken after accidentally unleashing his power and causing such a massive incident. He gasps out Chasey's name, his eyes filled with anxiety and guilt. Zeffy frantically embraces the unconscious Chasey, repeatedly calling out for her to wake up. Everything gradually settles down as the earlier tension begins to fade away. Chasey stirs gently and wakes up amid the anxious voices calling out to her. She realizes Zeffy is right beside her, his eyes lighting up with relief at seeing her safe. When she asks what happened, Zeffy sadly explains that Raven suddenly lost control and knocked her out cold. Fragmented images of the blinding light and the moment of the attack begin to resurface in Chasey's mind. She feels a surge of frustration, silently thinking that all of this pain is entirely his fault. Chasey forces back the pain to smile and asks Zeffy whether he has finally received the god's recognition. She offers her sincere congratulations, making the elf boy blush with joy even as he keeps denying it. Zeffy looks bashful and insists that none of that matters as much as whether she is okay, leaving Chasey a little puzzled. The time has finally come for this leg of the journey to draw to a close. Zeffy calls her back to share one crucial secret about Raven that she must absolutely remember. He warns her that being near her could make Raven lose control like a ticking time bomb and urges her to be extremely careful. Chasey quietly walks away while Zeffy keeps shouting after her, reminding her not to forget what he said. She feels foolish for thinking that years of deep-seated hatred could vanish so easily. She considers that perhaps she should choose to keep her distance, sparing him further pain and torment. As night falls, Raven stands alone in the vast meadow, seeking peace of mind. The elderly elf suddenly appears and joins him in admiring the shimmering beauty of the stars. The elder suggests that the beauty of the stars often reminds people of something particularly dear to their hearts. When asked what he is thinking about, Raven hesitates for a long moment before quietly murmuring that he will not admit she is beautiful. Eventually, he admits that lately his mind has been constantly preoccupied with a certain someone. Raven quickly denies it, insisting she is a terrible, irredeemable woman he wants nothing to do with. He lists off a string of her past flaws, such as selfishness, rudeness, and a complete lack of morals. Yet he cannot deny the strange transformation he has witnessed, as she has begun to genuinely care for and help the weak. She has devoted herself wholeheartedly to others without ever complaining about the hardship or exhaustion involved. Raven realizes that the way she now cares for everyone around her has completely transformed her into an entirely different person. At first, he believed this was merely an elaborate act designed to lower his guard, and he had once mocked himself, vowing never to be fooled. The more he observes her, the more he notices her radiant smile carries a rare, genuine sincerity. Though he still harbors doubts, this transformation has continued to stir his heart in ways he cannot ignore. The prince realizes he has begun to yearn and hope that all these wonderful changes are truly real. He fears that if she reverts to her old self, his pain will be far greater than anything he has felt before. Raven feels a sense of relief, as if finally able to breathe again upon seeing someone change for the better, yet he still wonders if this feeling is fair. He insists to the elder that these emotions are not romantic feelings, but merely the pain of someone carrying a psychological scar. The elder repeats the condition that one must possess the primal beauty in order to meet the god. Raven is startled, realizing the elder seems to have seen right through the vague thoughts stirring within him. the elder asks whether he has ever truly reflected on the real meaning of beauty. He explains that true beauty is found when a person lives authentically, true to their own nature. When one finds balance and harmony in simply being themselves, everything becomes whole and beautiful. The elder smiles and asks Raven whether he considers that a wonderful definition of beauty. Raven realizes that someone who possesses primal beauty is someone who always lives naturally and with genuine sincerity. A sudden flash of insight widens his eyes as he grasps an important truth. He is struck by the realization that the kind, good-hearted person she is now is actually Chasey's true nature. The elder assures him that the chance of her reverting to her old, wicked self is extremely low, easing Raven's mind. Together, they gaze up at the breathtaking night sky, admiring the beautiful stars. The next morning, with the help of the elf tribe, the army smoothly prepares to make their way back to the palace. Zeffie sobs and clings to Chasey, unwilling to let her go, while Raven grumbles that she is being far too indulgent toward the boy's selfishness. Chasey pats his head to comfort him and promises she will definitely come back to visit him someday soon. The two of them seal the promise with a heartfelt pinky swear. Zeffie adds one more demand, insisting on a wedding when they meet again, instantly sending Raven into a jealous fit. Raven decisively steps into the magic circle and orders her to follow him immediately. Chasey anxiously asks if she is about to be left behind as the magic circle begins to glow. A hand suddenly grabs hers tightly, and a voice asks what on earth she thinks she is doing. Raven pulls her close against him, teasingly scolding her for freezing up like someone who has never been teleported before. Flustered, Chasey explains she simply zoned out for a moment, while he warns her not to blindly agree to whatever anyone tells her. Zeffie waves goodbye from a distance, his face full of longing for her. Raven and the elder exchange a respectful nod as their final farewell. Both of them bow solemnly to bid farewell to the elf tribe before fully taking their leave. The elderly elf smiles with satisfaction and taps his staff on the ground to activate the magic circle. A blinding light envelops Raven and Chasey, transporting them back to the palace. The two of them land in the royal garden, and Chasey, unused to teleportation, collapses onto the ground the moment they arrive. Raven immediately teases her clumsy landing, asking if she has gone weak in the legs from hitting her head. She silently reasons that coming from a world without magic makes all of this feel utterly bizarre, while also worrying about her ability to survive here. Seeing her still sitting on the grass, Raven takes the initiative to offer his hand, asking how long she plans to sit there. His unexpected kindness leaves her suspicious, since he never normally pays her any attention. She mumbles a quiet thank you, still unable to make sense of his sudden change in attitude. Chasey suddenly remembers Zeffie's warning and worries about whether Raven might really be on the verge of exploding from overexerting himself. Raven hesitates for a long moment, his hand gripping his collar as if wrestling internally over what happened the night before. In the end, he sincerely apologizes for shoving her down, leaving Chasey utterly astonished. Chasey recalls Zeffie's warning that being near her could make Raven snap like a ticking time bomb, even as the prince gently tells her not to push herself too hard. She insists that she is fine and hopes Raven will simply treat her the way he always has, but the prince looks puzzled, unsure exactly what the way he always has is even supposed to mean. Seeing that he still does not seem to understand, Chasey continues pleading earnestly for him to follow through with what she is about to say. She cheerfully suggests that Raven should feel free to ignore her, look down on her, or even hurl insults at her if that will make him feel more comfortable. With the troubles involving the other races finally resolved, life in Diston has at last returned to its former peace. The atmosphere in the palace grows livelier, with soldiers even joking around, mimicking Chasey's bizarre suggestion to just insult her. However, the young soldiers' fun is suddenly interrupted by an unexpected commotion right before their eyes. The group looks around curiously, unable to figure out what is happening or who is causing the disturbance in the distance. Damien steps forward to explain that a festival theater troupe seems to have lost its way, asking everyone to clear a path to avoid further trouble. Realizing it is simply a misunderstanding involving a play, the soldiers sigh with relief while finding the whole situation rather comical. Meanwhile, Prince Raven grows increasingly irritated at seeing so many people gathering and gossiping around him. He snaps at Damien, asking how many more times he has to repeat this, leaving Damien with no choice but to bow and apologize. Damien criticizes Chasey for making remarks that could easily cause misunderstandings in front of the troops, while also reminding the prince that arguing harshly with a woman is simply unacceptable behavior. He lectures Raven loudly, insisting that only by behaving properly, befitting a prince, can the order and dignity of the palace be maintained. But right in the middle of his passionate lecture on etiquette, Damien suddenly suffers a severe nosebleed and cannot utter another word. To the shock of both Raven and Chasey, Damien suddenly collapses to the floor, passing out cold. The two of them can only freeze in place, watching with concern as Damien is carried off for emergency care. Raven urgently questions the doctor about the current condition of his loyal aide. The doctor explains that Damien has simply fallen into a deep sleep after enduring a prolonged period of severe sleep deprivation. Chasey is utterly astonished to learn that prolonged sleep deprivation can lead to such alarming symptoms. The doctor assures them that as long as Damien avoids stressful situations and gets sufficient rest, he will recover quickly. Raven and Chasey both agree to do everything they can to ensure Damien gets the peace and quiet he needs to recover. As they leave the sick room, Chasey still cannot shake her worry and asks once more whether Damien is truly going to be okay. The prince assures her there is nothing to worry about, since he has personally spoken with Damien and confirmed the situation himself. It turns out Damien has struggled with insomnia for a very long time, but always appeared so composed that no one around him ever noticed his exhaustion. Chasey feels a pang of regret, realizing she had never noticed the hardships Damien had been silently enduring all this time. Raven tells her not to add any more pressure with her remarks, leaving Chasey confused and asking what exactly she did wrong. She timidly asks whether her earlier words had really upset the prince. Raven irritably asks whether she is being serious or just trying to mock him with such ridiculous questions. Chasey explains that she only suggested he insult or belittle her because she wanted to make things easier and less forced for him. She points out plainly that this is exactly how he has always treated her anyway, leaving Raven suddenly silent. Chasey wonders why he seems to be reacting as though he has been deeply hurt by this. She figures he must feel uncomfortable having to compromise with someone he has always despised, and decides now is the time to clear the air completely. Chasey excitedly runs after him to announce that, starting today, she will officially resign to give him back his freedom and peace of mind. She promises to disappear completely, so she will never have to show her face in front of the prince again, leaving him too stunned to respond. She smiles happily, convinced this is the best way to set Raven free, wondering why she did not think of it sooner. But her joy is short-lived, as Chasey suddenly remembers the kitchen and worries about who will take over the cooking if she leaves so abruptly. She hesitantly suggests continuing to work for just a little while longer, until the palace finds a new cook to replace her. Raven turns and walks away, not without remarking that she truly remains as selfish as ever, unchanged. He coldly tells her to do whatever she wants, leaving her standing there, overwhelmed with confusion and unease. Chasey senses that the atmosphere has grown strangely tense, feeling that things are not unfolding the way she had planned at all. She has the distinct feeling that she has said something wrong, causing some kind of hurt to the prince, even though she never meant any harm. The magnificent Diston Palace stands as peaceful as ever, even as emotions run high among the characters within. Along the way, Chasey runs into some familiar soldiers and cheerfully greets them. The soldiers, looking sheepish, ask each other where Chasey had just disappeared to, even wondering aloud if they had seen a ghost in broad daylight. Raven suddenly appears behind them, startling the two soldiers as he presses them about this talk of a ghost roaming the palace. The two men frantically deny it, insisting it must have been their imagination that made them think they saw Chasey, when it was really nothing but an illusion. Raven replies thoughtfully that he understands the situation well enough and will not pursue the matter further. Elsewhere, Chasey sighs with relief at having just avoided the prince, having deliberately chosen the spot farthest from his office, yet still nearly running into him. Recalling Zeffie's comparison of Raven to a ticking time bomb, she tells herself it is best to maintain a safe distance for both their sakes. She racks her brain, realizing that avoiding Raven in such a vast palace has turned out to be a far tougher challenge than she expected. In the end, she decides to head to the royal library, unable to help but feel awed by its sheer imposing scale. Chasey begins browsing the shelves, quietly hoping to find some romance novel to pass the time and unwind. She stumbles upon a book teaching quick cooking magic, realizing that even in this world, such practical guides exist. Amid the hushed stillness of the library, another figure is also quietly picking out books among the towering shelves. Through a gap between the bookshelves, Raven unexpectedly spots Chasey standing on the other side. A flicker of surprise and deep thought crosses his eyes at seeing the girl, who rarely reads, showing up in a place like this. Chasey finds a cozy spot to sit by the window and begins intently studying the magic cookbook she just found. From a distance, Raven quietly watches the girl absorbed in her reading, his gaze filled with thoughtful curiosity. Chasey mutters quietly to herself about the fresh, fascinating knowledge she has just discovered in the book. Raven suddenly approaches and remarks that she seems to have become an entirely different person, startling Chasey into asking what he means. She asks in a fluster why Prince Raven is here, and why he always seems to appear wherever she goes. Raven, puzzled by her overreaction, asks whether he is not even allowed to be in the library. She explains that she is simply curious, while Raven admits this is the first time he has ever seen her actually pick up a book and read it seriously. Chasey eagerly explains that she is learning cooking magic to make food preparation and preservation easier and more convenient. Raven expresses confusion over why she is putting in so much effort and dedication when she has already announced she is about to resign. He looks straight into her eyes and presses her for the real reason behind this effort to change herself. Chasey smiles brightly and insists that since this is her job, wanting to cook better and faster is simply the natural thing to do. Hearing such sincere words, Raven smiles faintly and replies that he now understands her intentions a little better. A red-haired girl named Rosalind suddenly appears, flashing a mysterious smile upon spotting some familiar faces. Rosalind looks quite astonished to run into both Prince Raven and Chasey together in a place like this. She politely greets them after such a long time apart. With a curious expression, Rosalind giggles and asks what secret the two of them could possibly be discussing all alone like this. She remarks again on her surprise at finding both the prince and the young lady together at the library at the same time. Rosalind adds that the two of them being alone in such a dim, secluded spot could easily lead to gossip if someone happened to spot them. She asks whether he is genuinely worried about that, but he simply replies calmly that he does not care much either way. Using the excuse of being busy, Prince Raven quickly makes his exit, leaving the two women alone together. Rosalind immediately turns to check in on Chasey, assuming her friend must have felt terribly lonely without her all this time. Chasey wonders to herself just who this overly familiar stranger is, then awkwardly asks how long it has actually been since they last saw each other. Rosalind scolds Chasey for abandoning her for 3 whole months to go traveling, pouting as if she feels their friendship has been forgotten. She remarks that Chasey's current outfit and makeup make her look so different that she almost did not recognize her. Rosalind leans in close to study the change in Chasey, while the silver-haired girl still has no idea what is going on. After staring intently for a while, Rosalind smiles knowingly, as if she has noticed something intriguing about her friend. She expresses surprise at finding Chasey in a library, since this place clearly does not sell any dresses at all. Recalling how Chasey used to despise reading and always dismissed books as boring, Rosalind teasingly asks since when her friend became such a diligent scholar. Chasey explains that she found a rather interesting cookbook and wants to study it further, leaving Rosalind utterly astonished. Rosalind laughs, remarking that Chasey has become full of surprises lately, while the silver-haired girl cannot quite tell if she is being complimented or teased. The red-haired girl suggests they head into town to go shopping instead of wasting time in a place so unsuited to Chasey. Even though Rosalind mentions her favorite designer's new collection, Chasey remains firm in her refusal, insisting she wants to spend her time studying magic instead. The very word magic coming out of Chasey's mouth leaves Rosalind utterly stunned. Standing behind the door, Raven privately thinks that her old habit of hiring a witch whenever magic was needed is far more in line with the real Chasey. Chasey starts to break into a nervous sweat, worried her words might arouse suspicion. She hurriedly explains that she has changed recently and is no longer the shallow person she used to be. Chasey insists that reading and cooking now bring her real joy, especially when she sees people enjoying the dishes she makes. Still, she honestly admits that despite trying hard to read, she cannot understand a single page of the magic book. Even so, Chasey hugs the book tightly and smiles brightly, genuinely finding the whole learning process fascinating. From a distance, Raven quietly observes her sincere expression with a thoughtful gaze from among the bookshelves. In contrast to the cheerful mood, Rosalind's face suddenly turns dark and unreadable as she watches her friend. The red-haired girl remarks that Chasey seems like a completely different person compared to before. Rosalind promises not to disturb her reading today, but insists that Chasey must absolutely join her next time. As she walks away, Rosalind quietly tells herself that no matter what has happened, she will never let Chasey slip out of her grasp. On another day, Chasey returns to the library, hoping to find a simpler, easier book to read. Rosalind shows up again unexpectedly, explaining she came to look for books on fashion, while Chasey silently realizes this is the same girl from before. The red-haired girl quickly grabs Chasey's hand and urges her to go shopping for the designer dresses she mentioned earlier. Chasey tries to decline, explaining that she came here to read, not to go out and have fun. Rosalind immediately puts on a pitiful expression, asking if Chasey no longer considers her a friend since she keeps refusing. Faced with Chasey's hesitation, Rosalind flashes a triumphant smile, confident her friend will never have the heart to turn her down. In the end, Chasey has no choice but to give in and agree to go along with Rosalind, much to the red-haired girl's delight. The silver-haired girl realizes she has been completely swept along by Rosalind's pace, with no way to resist. Glancing back at the library, Chasey consoles herself that studying can simply wait until tomorrow. Rosalind smugly thinks to herself that Chasey is such an easy fool to lead around. She feels triumphant, having successfully gotten Chasey exactly where she wanted her, as they head out for a day on the town. The moment they step into the shop, Chasey starts to sense something is off, even though Rosalind claims they are only there to look at dresses. The shop owner warmly welcomes the two ladies and introduces her latest designs, fresh off the racks. Looking around the familiar space, Chasey guesses she must have once been a regular at this rather bizarre boutique. The silver-haired girl freezes upon seeing the incredibly strange and bewildering outfits being presented to her. Chasey wonders in bewilderment whether she truly used to spend money on things that look like nothing more than scraps of rag. While Rosalind gushes over the new collection, Chasey finds the design details utterly bizarre and eccentric. She hastily declines trying anything on, but Rosalind insists firmly, claiming the outfits suit her perfectly. Both the shop owner and Rosalind surround Chasey, insisting these outfits were practically made just for her. Pushed to her limit, Chasey exclaims that she already has more than enough dresses at home and has no need to buy anything else. The two of them just laugh it off, assuming Chasey is joking, even as she remains completely serious. Chasey resorts to lying, claiming she has already spent all her allowance in a desperate bid to escape, leaving both the shop owner and Rosalind utterly astonished. She further explains that her father has threatened to throw her out of the house if she continues spending so recklessly. Rosalind privately mocks Chasey's taste and her choice of friends upon seeing her friend's awkward attempt to wriggle out of it. Rosalind tries on a flamboyant feathered hat and asks for her opinion, while Chasey silently thinks she looks exactly like a peacock. The shop owner heaps praise on Rosalind's discerning eye as she decides to add the item to her purchase. The red-haired girl continues picking out more items, thoroughly enjoying the attentive service of the shop staff. After finishing their shopping, the two of them leave the store amid the owner's warm farewell. Chasey is about to head home when Rosalind stops her, asking her to wait just a little longer. Suddenly, Rosalind pulls out a gift bag, saying she specially picked this item just for Chasey. The red-haired girl explains this is a makeup gift, since she was unable to bring back a souvenir from her last trip. Chasey feels deeply touched, realizing Rosalind has genuinely been thinking about the missing souvenir all this time. Though she appreciates the gesture, Chasey begins to worry that whatever is inside might be just as bizarre as the dresses from earlier. Seeing Chasey hesitate, Rosalind looks visibly hurt and asks if her gift is somehow bothering her. Watching her expression, Chasey privately thinks that Rosalind might be the only person in this world who genuinely cares about and loves her. She suddenly recalls the cruel words from her past, when everyone believed she was heartless and undeserving of love. Chasey quietly apologizes for hurting Rosalind's feelings, coming to appreciate the importance of expressing one's true emotions. She cherishes the gift and promises to treasure it, leaving Rosalind sighing with relief that her gift has finally been accepted. Rosalind excitedly asks if the new dress looks good, while Chasey silently wonders just how many more outfits she will have to try on before this fitting session finally ends. The red-haired girl feels immensely pleased, convinced this eccentric design perfectly suits her friend's taste, while Chasey privately thinks this must be nothing short of a trap. Rosalind notices Chasey has not bothered with makeup lately and insists on personally touching up her friend's look, leaving the silver-haired girl utterly astonished by such overwhelming enthusiasm. With a radiant smile, Rosalind invites Chasey over to her place right away to keep the fun going. Chasey is completely stunned and flustered by this sudden invitation, unable to think of an excuse fast enough to decline. Chasey feels her head spinning and tells herself that at this rate she will soon collapse from exhaustion, so she resolves to find a way home to rest as soon as possible. She hurriedly bids Rosalind farewell to head home, while her friend looks disappointed, still wishing to continue their outing, but reluctantly accepts once she sees just how exhausted Chasey has become. Rosalind promises that next time, the two of them will absolutely have to party until dawn to make up for today. Faced with Rosalind's rather terrifying promise, Chasey can only stay silent, her face clearly showing worry and helplessness. Back at the mansion, Chasey collapses flat on the floor, exhausted, complaining that she has no energy left to move or do anything at all. She still cannot shake off the memory of her red-haired friend's beaming smile and somewhat alarming enthusiasm. The image of Rosalind's mysterious smile, combined with her promise to party until dawn, leaves Chasey so frightened she can only scream internally for her friend to stop tormenting her. In the quiet royal library, the morning sunlight streams down over the towering bookshelves, creating a solemn, majestic atmosphere. Rosalind finds the books here utterly dull and wonders when Chasey will finally show up so they can get up to some mischief together. The red-haired girl suddenly senses something unusual and glances around warily. Chasey is actually hiding nearby, holding her breath and trying to sneak away quickly by crawling low along the floor to avoid being caught by Rosalind. Prince Raven strides down the sunlit palace corridor, his expression stern and dignified. The admiring soldiers watch him pass, murmuring about how he is an incredibly respectable man who never seems to slack off or rest, not even for a single day. In truth, Raven is secretly exhausted too, silently wishing he could take a satisfying nap after such grueling training sessions. As he drowsily looks for a place to lie down, he is stunned to discover Chasey crawling along the corridor floor in the most bewildering manner. The prince asks what on earth she is doing, startling Chasey so badly that she jolts up and yelps in shock. Raven immediately guesses that she wanted to go to the library, but, spotting Rosalind waiting there, decided to crawl along the floor instead to sneak away undetected. He remarks, half amused, that she truly has a natural talent for coming up with new ways to drive people crazy every single day. Raven mentions that he is also on his way to the library, while Chasey, still lying flat on the ground, praises his diligent decision. Noticing the prince seems to hesitate as if wanting to say something, she looks up curiously and asks if there is anything else on his mind. Raven, feeling a bit uneasy seeing her lying on the cold floor, offers to help her up, but Chasey flatly refuses. She insists she is perfectly fine and is gradually adjusting to this lying position, leaving Raven at a complete loss over her bizarre ability to adapt. Before he walks off, she cannot resist telling him to take care of himself, leaving Raven utterly baffled and unsure what he just heard. Raven stands alone among the bookshelves, deep in thought over Chasey's strange and unpredictable behavior. The prince feels genuinely insulted that, after kindly offering to help her, she not only refused while lying flat on the floor, but also tossed off a careless "take care" as if brushing him aside. He considers it the height of rudeness, practically an insult to his status. His anger flares as he recalls how she once clung to him relentlessly, yet now seems to avoid him as though she despises him. Chasey offers him a tray of cookies, but Raven flatly refuses, saying he is in no mood to eat. She scolds him for always treating everyone like an enemy, and Raven coldly admits that it is because he genuinely despises them. After that harsh remark, the prince suddenly falls silent, quietly thinking that perhaps he should not have said such cruel words in a moment of anger. Just then, Rosalind appears from behind, startling Raven into a sharp gasp. Looking visibly tense, the red-haired girl excitedly boasts that she just baked some cookies and offers the prince a taste to see if they are to his liking. Raven silently watches Rosalind with a sharp, suspicious gaze while she maintains her usual cheerful smile. The heart-shaped bag of cookies looks quite appealing, yet Raven eyes it as if it were some kind of dangerous weapon. The soldiers in the distance gossip about how, right after Chasey complained of hunger, they saw the prince holding a bag of Rosalind's cookies, leaving everyone secretly envious of the attention she received. One soldier tilts his head back and complains loudly about being hungry too, harboring the faint hope that he might receive the same kind of attention from the prince. A strange silence falls over the group as no one bothers to respond to the soldier's ridiculous complaint. Another soldier advises his friend to stop joking around and just eat, figuring the prince is probably far too busy with important matters. The moment he bites into the cookie, the soldier grimaces at the terrible taste, while Chasey privately wonders whether Raven somehow found out that she was the one who sent the happy letter and is now feeding her a bad cookie out of spite. Lost in thought, Chasey is startled when a book is suddenly placed on top of her head, realizing Raven has returned without her noticing. Seeing Raven appear so suddenly, Chasey anxiously asks about the identity of the letter's sender, worried about how the prince plans to punish the culprit. Raven casually suggests they could just behead the person, sending Chasey pale with fear since she herself is the culprit. Noticing her overreaction, the prince bursts out laughing and tells her he is only joking, leaving Chasey sighing with relief as if she had just escaped death itself. Even knowing it was a joke, she still feels a chill down her spine, since coming from someone with real power over life and death, even a joke like that feels far too unsettling. To ease her nerves, Raven offers to share an interesting secret she probably has never known before. He reveals that this particular spot cannot actually be seen from the library, meaning she never needed to crawl on the floor to hide from Rosalind in the first place. Raven hands her the exact book Chasey has been searching for, leaving her astonished at how well he seems to understand her thoughts. He declares that nothing in the kingdom of Diston ever escapes his notice, including the fact that she has secretly been studying cooking magic. Chasey hesitates over whether to accept the book, while Raven urges her to stop pretending and just take it already. She firmly waves her hand in refusal, prompting the prince to grow frustrated and demand loudly why she refuses to accept his good intentions. Chasey exclaims that she is trying to maintain distance because being close to the prince right now is extremely dangerous for both of them. She explains this is her way of protecting him, leaving Raven convinced her reasoning is utterly absurd and demanding a clear explanation. Chasey hesitates, avoiding the prince's gaze with a flustered expression, unsure where to even begin. She starts to briefly explain why she feels the need to maintain this kind of distance from him. Recalling the elf boy's warning, she believes that being near her could destabilize the prince's emotions, causing him to explode at any moment like a ticking time bomb. Hearing this, Raven becomes furious that she would believe such nonsense from an elf child and demands she come to her senses immediately. He explains that deep in that dangerous forest, it was only natural for him to feel tense while having to protect a fragile commoner like her. Chasey sighs with relief, realizing he does not actually despise her, but Raven quickly clarifies that his protecting her was purely a prince's duty toward his people, nothing more. He insists he holds no personal feelings whatsoever and hopes she will not misunderstand, and Chasey happily agrees, finding the clarification a relief. Raven silently curses the young elf for spreading such nonsense and causing this misunderstanding, while Chasey still feels a bit uneasy about the whole situation. Once the misunderstanding is cleared up, Chasey curiously asks whether this is the only magic textbook available here. She wishes there were more books like this to study, but worries she cannot visit the library often enough without running into Rosalind. Seeing her troubled by this, Raven hesitates for a moment before making an unexpected offer to help the silver-haired girl. He offers to personally bring her more books whenever she needs them, filling Chasey with joy at having successfully found a way to both learn magic and avoid the terror that is Rosalind. Raven asks whether she has ever studied magic before, since he has never heard of it, and she honestly admits this is truly her first time encountering it. Raven curiously asks Chasey why she is drawn to all these books, and when she says she wants to learn magic, he asks in surprise how exactly she plans to do that, leaving her just as puzzled as him. The two of them stand there staring at each other in bewilderment, question marks practically floating above their heads, neither able to grasp the other's intentions. Raven sighs, mocking the idea that someone with absolutely no foundation would dare dive straight into magic, as he asks whether she has ever taken a mana aptitude test. Chasey freezes, her face full of confusion upon hearing this completely unfamiliar concept of an aptitude test. Without giving her a chance to react, Prince Raven immediately orders her to follow him at once to sort this out. Learning magic, as it turns out, is far from simple, always demanding rigorous, fundamental first steps. To begin, Chasey must undergo an important test to determine whether she actually possesses any magical potential at all. Standing before a mysterious door, Chasey timidly asks whether this place can truly measure real power, and receives a confirming nod from the prince. However, Raven notes there is still one important step to complete before the official test can begin. He suddenly steps closer and touches Chasey, causing a gentle light to bloom and envelop her. Chasey is utterly stunned to realize that the persistent ache in her shoulder has completely vanished, as if by magic. Raven reveals that he has been practicing healing magic himself, and promises that once she learns magic too, she will be able to do the same, filling her with excitement. All the preparations proceed smoothly, exactly according to the prince's plan. Raven points to a small stone on the pedestal and asks Chasey to lift it, and she realizes that his earlier healing of her shoulder was simply to set up for this very test. Raven warns her not to take this lightly, since even someone with weak mana would be unable to budge the stone even slightly. Chasey swallows nervously, quietly steeling herself for the difficult challenge ahead. She reaches out, focusing all her attention on the small stone resting motionless on the pedestal. Both of them hold their breath, waiting for the decisive moment to see what will actually happen. To everyone's astonishment, Chasey lifts the stone effortlessly, leaving Prince Raven wide-eyed with shock. She wonders if Raven accidentally gave her the wrong stone since it feels as light as a pebble, but he insists this particular stone has never once been moved from its spot by anyone. Raven begins pondering how the elf tribe's magic also had no effect on her earlier, and a startling theory begins forming in his mind about her unique constitution. Chasey innocently holds the small stone in her hand, completely unaware that she has just accomplished something extraordinary. Raven muses deeply that he needs to arrange more thorough tests to get to the bottom of this mystery. She can only stand there looking dazed, watching the prince with a head full of unanswered questions. A formidable team of mages is suddenly summoned to the palace, filling the atmosphere with bustling energy and pressure. The mages grumble about being dragged out of their laboratories in broad daylight, squinting uncomfortably under the bright sunlight. Witnessing this grand yet unnerving spectacle, Chasey feels a chill run down her spine and just wants to find a way to slip away and escape. Raven reassures her this is simply a routine test, but Chasey counters that summoning an entire team of mages hardly seems simple at all. The prince reveals that his real purpose is to determine what kind of magic, if any, can actually affect her. Chasey is alarmed to realize she has essentially become a test subject for Raven's magical research. The prince calmly admits it with a knowing smile, sending Chasey spiraling into a state of complete despair and numbness. Her face turns ashen, as if her very soul has left her body after hearing the prince's blunt confession. The mages excitedly debate which spells to try, with some even suggesting turning Chasey into a cat or dog to test whether the magic would be nullified. The mages wonder about the origin of these strange magics and question what the prince's true purpose could be in having them do all this. The head mage mutters to himself, wondering whether the prince is trying to research deeper into techniques for nullifying magic. He grumbles that if his subordinates are so curious, they should just go ask the prince directly, since he does not know any more than they do. Raven thanks everyone for their cooperation and asks these top mages to help verify the type of magic he has been diligently researching. The prince's encouraging words and promises of generous compensation leave the young mages deeply moved and full of admiration for him. Fired up with enthusiasm, they resolve to give it their all to prove their true skill in front of him, determined not to disappoint the prince's expectations. The official test begins amid tense anticipation from everyone present. One mage focuses intently, preparing to cast the very first spell directed at Chasey. A spell called Hair Growth is unleashed with full force in hopes of producing some noticeable reaction. Yet the result is an eerie silence as Chasey shows absolutely no change to her body whatsoever. The mages continue trying their luck with a cat transformation spell, but once again the attempt ends in dismal failure. Once more, all their efforts prove utterly futile, as the spell has no effect on her at all. Undeterred, they move on to attempt a spell that turns someone into a man, hoping this might finally turn things around. In the end, all their efforts go to waste, as not a single type of magic manages to have any effect on her whatsoever. Witnessing this strange phenomenon, the mages shower Raven with praise for creating such flawlessly perfect test spells. The prince humbly accepts their praise and signals everyone to disperse, now that the task has been completed successfully. The door closes with a dry, hollow click, restoring the quiet stillness of the room. Raven sighs, exhausted from dealing with so many people, prompting Chasey to privately remark that he really is someone who prefers solitude. Raven admits that Chasey's body is even stranger and more unique than anything he had ever imagined. He explains that she possesses an extremely rare constitution, capable of repelling or nullifying any type of magic used on her. However, he affirms that only his own power seems capable of affecting her in any way, leaving Chasey utterly astonished. Raven sees straight through her shocked expression, and points out that it is written plainly all over her face. Impossible to hide. He honestly admits he does not know the reason himself, but the fact that his magic can affect her is undeniable. Chasey begins to spiral into confused speculation, wondering whether this is some effect of being a time traveler, or perhaps the result of the original character's blind devotion to Raven. She anxiously asks whether this strange constitution might prevent her from ever learning magic at all. Raven reassures her that only other people's magic fails to affect her, while her own attempts to cultivate magic through her own power are an entirely different matter. Chasey wonders why she can still use other people's teleportation magic, only to receive a thoughtful silence from the prince. He explains that this kind of magic simply connects two spaces rather than flowing directly through the body to exert influence, which is why she is still able to use it. After hearing this thorough explanation, she finally breathes a sigh of relief, feeling much more at ease now that she understands the issue. Chasey eagerly picks up the book and asks if she can start practicing the spells inside right away. Raven teases her, comparing her to a child who cannot even hold a pen, yet already wants to write a novel, leaving her laughing sheepishly at her own overeagerness. From within the shadows, Rosalind quietly observes the intimate exchange between the two of them, her eyes filled with envy and calculation. Finally, the prince decrees that he will personally teach her magic during his breaks at his office. The palace glows brilliantly under the morning sun, signaling the beginning of an exciting new journey of learning. On Raven's desk lie a set of magic books already prepared for the very first lesson. He studies them closely and realizes this material is far too dry and difficult for a complete beginner like Chasey. So the prince secretly prepares a simple book on fireworks magic, filled with wonderfully cute shapes, made especially for his young student. Raven meticulously prepares the curriculum for his special student's lesson. He quietly calculates that if she finds the dry material overwhelming, lowering the difficulty down to this level should be a perfectly reasonable idea. While he is absorbed in his preparations, a firm knock suddenly sounds at the door, forcing him to pause everything. Raven quickly gathers up the books scattered on his desk and immediately straightens his posture, adjusting his seat to appear composed and dignified, striving to maintain the proper bearing of an authoritative prince before greeting his visitor. He clears his throat, granting permission for the person outside to enter, his sharp eyes still watchfully fixed on the door, trying to discern who has come to disturb him at this moment.